One of Those Mornings, a short story written and narrated by Robert Fairhead from the Tall and True writers' website. Have you ever had one of those mornings? You know, where everything goes wrong. It's like a farce, a series of mishaps, increasing in frequency and intensity, that have you howling with side-splitting laughter or shedding tears of frustration. Mine started when I forgot to set the alarm for Amy's swim squad training. "Dad, I'll be in so much trouble." "Don't worry," I said, trying to soothe her teenage tantrum while negotiating the deserted early morning streets and traffic lights as swiftly and legally as possible. "I'll tell the coach it's my fault." We were only 10 minutes late, but when we arrived at the pool, we learned the coach had cancelled training overnight due to a forecast thunderstorm. "You should have checked the pool website, Dad." "Yes, sorry, Amy," I said, reaching into my backpack for the placating breakfast box of fruit and yogurt I'd packed for her, only to find I'd left it on the kitchen bench top at home. This morning's farce wasn't leaving Amy or me laughing. The traffic was heavier heading home, and the storms outside and inside the car made the drive more stressful. Thankfully, sleep and breakfast-deprived Amy dozed off in the back seat, and there were no more sharp words in the car or at home before she left for school. Instead, I suffered her sullen silence. Before she got sick, weekday mornings were Chloe's responsibility. I had long commutes to the office and was out the door while Amy was still sleeping. Chloe got her up and off to school. She also did the swim squad training runs, the only times I'd get a grunted, "Good morning," from a bleary-eyed Amy. I rearranged my weekdays when the oncologist diagnosed Chloe's cancer. Fortunately, COVID lockdowns normalised working from home, and the office let me continue working remotely post-pandemic. We were hopeful at the beginning of Chloe's illness and resigned at the end. It was tough for us, but worse for Amy, who couldn't understand why her mum was leaving her. We tried to explain it, but didn't have the answers for ourselves, let alone for our teenage daughter. Chloe's death pulled me in so many directions, struggling with grief from a departed wife, the condolences of family and friends, and the demands of work. Cutting through the conflicting emotions, however, I knew I had to be there for Amy. It's not as if I hadn't been present in her life, but I'd not been the sole presence, and I felt poorly equipped to guide a teenage girl through the trauma of losing her mum and beyond. A text notification sounded on my phone, returning me to the present. It was Amy. Perhaps she'd forgotten her lunch, or a homework assignment. I read the message. "Sorry about this morning, Dad. I know you're trying. Love you." Yes, it had been one of those mornings. It hadn't left me laughing, or too frustrated. But although I was shedding happy tears, I'd remember the alarm next week. Hi, I'm Robert Fairhead from Tall and True Short Reads and the Tall and True writers' website. One of Those Mornings was my entry for the Australian Writers' Centre's April 2024 Furious Fiction Writing Challenge. And as I shared in the 5 April Stories blog post on Tall and True, it was also the 5th April story I'd written for Furious Fiction since my first in 2020. The brief was, your story's first sentence must be a question. It must include something being pulled, and the words post, tear or tear, and thunder. In addition to examples of questions and how writers can use them to open a story and engage the reader, the Writers' Centre specified, for this challenge, we don't want to see any "she said" or "Jane asked" tags at the end of the first sentence. It must end with a question mark. My question, have you ever had one of those days? And the scenario for the short story, about a widowed father with a teenage daughter, came to me very quickly. But soon after I started writing, I realised it was too broad, and I'd need far more than 500 words to tell the story. And even if I had 1,000 words, I doubted it would engage the reader until the end. So midway through, I gave up on the story and thought of another opening question. Can you keep a secret? I wrote a paragraph, but returned to my original story, drawn back by its characters and premise. However, I tightened the timeline and pace by slightly modifying the question. Have you ever had one of those mornings? The Writers' Centre judges didn't showcase or longlist my 5th April Furious Fiction, which was disappointing. But as my protagonist artist says in another of my Furious Fictions, The Winner's Toast, episode 45 of Tall and True Short Reads, I've learned to channel disappointment into creative energy. I revisited the story, tweaked a few sentences, and shared it on Tall and True. I even changed the last sentence when I drafted the script before narrating it for Tall and True Short Reads, adding that the father was shedding happy tears, but would remember the alarm next week. I hope you enjoyed listening to One of Those Mornings. You can read this and my selected short stories, blog posts, and other writings at tallandtrue.com. You can also buy my short story collections, including the latest Tall and True microfiction anthology, from the Amazon Kindle, Apple Books, and Kobo online bookstores. Links are available in the show notes. The next episode of Tall and True Short Reads will be released shortly. In the meantime, please check your feed or the podcast website, tallandtrueshortreads.com, for earlier episodes from all 4 seasons. And follow or subscribe to the podcast and rate and review it via your favourite podcasting app. Doing so helps share my storytelling. You can support the podcast financially by making a small one-off or regular donation via the Acast supporter page. You'll find a link in the show notes. Finally, please share this episode with family and friends and spread the word about Tall and True Short Reads and the Tall and True Writers website.